The NBA playoffs are nearly upon us, and I have taken the liberty to create my own 2022 playoff bracket for all of you. So if any of you want to be absolutely 100% correct in your playoff predictions, you should probably look somewhere else. Like, not gonna lie, I'm not great at predicting things, don't tend to get them all right all the time. But, seriously though, this is my playoff bracket, and I'm gonna walk you all through it. And before you say anything, yes, I know the 8 seeds are not yet decided. I can hear you thinking it right now. Mike, the play-in games are still going on, we don't know who's gonna face the 1 seed, blah 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 blah. Look, whether the Cavs make it or the Hawks, whether it is the Pelicans or the Clippers, can we all just agree that they don't stand a chance against the 1 seed? Like, I'm seeing some weird narratives about, like, the Hawks might upset the Heat, and no, they won't. I really don't see any way that happens. The Hawks have not played like that team this season. The Clippers, if Kawhi Leonard was to miraculously return, would have a chance, but I don't see any way that that happens. And even if he did return, he wouldn't have chemistry with the team, and the Suns have just been so good this season that I still don't see a way the Clippers would win that series. So, here are not only my playoff predictions, but also my predictions for the final 2 play-in games. That's right, y'all got 2 free games out of this. Aren't you special? Starting with the Western Conference, because that is the conference that I made first when doing this bracket, I have the Clippers making the 8th seed in the West, and unless Kawhi Leonard comes back, which he could, but assuming he doesn't, I have the Suns winning this series in a mere 5 games. Maybe they manage to push it to 6. The Clippers can run some interesting lineups. Maybe they can challenge the Suns, who kind of fell off the gas at the end of the season. They were resting a lot. But honestly, I don't see this being a competitive series. I think the Clippers can steal a game just because they aren't a bad team. They're a solid team, especially for an 8th seed. But the Phoenix Suns have just been absolutely unstoppable this season. And here's a cool factoid I heard the other day. No NBA team since 1973 has led the league in wins by at least 7, and the Clippers lead the regular season by 8, has led the league in wins by at least 7 and failed to win the championship. The only team who did not win the championship that season was the 1973 Boston Celtics, who had some serious injuries in the playoffs. That's just a cool fact for y'all. Anyway, next up we have the 4 versus the 5 seed, the Mavs and the Jazz. And this is a really tough one for me. The Jazz are certainly, on paper, the better overall team. The Mavericks may have the best player in the series, but the Jazz arguably have the next, 3 to 4 best players. They're a very good all-around team who really struggled at the end of the season. I could easily see this series going either way. But ultimately, I think that if the Jazz start to have their woes, which they inevitably will, the Mavs are a very good offensive team since their trade. They're a good defensive team as well, and they're going to have one of these games. Here's what I picture in this series. They're going to have one of these games in the middle of the series, like Game 3 or Game 4. The Jazz are going to be up, and the Mavs are going to have a big lead, and another comeback's going to be blown, and the Jazz are going to have their already iffy locker room put under the microscope by the media, even more so. And I think the Mavs are going to prevail in this series, and things are going to be looking real bad in Utah next season. With that said, I could easily see the Jazz winning this series. I could see the Jazz winning this series in 6, not even 7. So it could very much go either way, but my prediction is that the Dallas Mavericks will pull through in the end and make it to the second round of the playoffs for the first time in Luka's career. Next up, we have the 3 versus the 6 seed, Golden State versus the Nuggets. Now, we don't know when Steph Curry will return. It's possible he will be back for Game 1. It's very likely, according to the reports, that he will be back for Game 2. But we really don't know how soon he's going to be back. So I decided to play it safe and say Golden State in 6. There is a world where they sweep this series. And there is also a world where Curry doesn't come back until Game 3, and the Nuggets pull off an insane upset in 7 games. However, my safe prediction is going to be Golden State in 6. They don't have anyone who can even come close to stopping Nikola Jokic. No one in the league can, but especially not Draymond Green and whatever crap backup center they throw at him. However, the Nuggets really don't have anyone else. They have confirmed that MPJ and Jamal Murray will not be coming back for the playoffs, so the best that I can see is Nuggets winning 2 games and then losing in 6, because the Warriors may have some chemistry issues with Curry just coming back. They've had some guys who've been real up and down, so I think the Nuggets could get 2 games out of this, but I'm predicting the Warriors will win in a relatively easy 6 games once Curry comes back. And then the final first round matchup in the West, Grizzlies versus Timberwolves. I am very happy the Timberwolves got this matchup. I think this is going to be an exciting and fun series, despite the relatively low number of games. I think that the Grizzlies will pull away in 5, but I think that most of these games will be somewhat close, and these are just 2 very young, very fast, very entertaining teams to watch. I think it's going to be full of highlights. Anthony Edwards versus Ja Morant is going to be very fun. Karl Anthony Towns should be interesting. He'll get to go off. We'll see how good D'Lo can be. Desmond Bane. A lot of fun players to watch in this series, but ultimately I do believe that the Timberwolves and the issues that they have on their roster, whether it be defensively or with their overall mentality, maturity, how well they handle high-pressure situations, I do think they are going to fall to the Grizzlies in a mere 5 games. Moving back to the Eastern Conference, first round, I think that the Hawks are going to make the 8th seed. I think they're going to beat the crippled Cavs. Maybe Jarrett Allen comes back and they win that series, but even if he does, I think the Hawks have a chance. Nevertheless, I said series, it's 1 game. Nevertheless, whether the Hawks or the Cavs make it, this is a 5-game series at best. I would like to be clear, at best. I think there is a very real possibility that whether it is the Cavs, and that is a healthy Cavs with Jarrett Allen, or the Atlanta Hawks, the Heat could sweep this team. The Heat really could sweep either of these teams. Neither of them have looked like legit playoff opponents over the last few months. They just don't look like real good teams. I think a healthy Heat team is going to mop the floor with them. I do expect them to be able to steal 1 game from the Heat because they have some issues of their own, but ultimately I don't see a way that the Heat lose this series or even really let it become competitive. Heat in 5. Next up in the East, we have the series that is currently keeping me awake at night, sleeping with a cold sweat, and that is the Sixers versus the Raptors in the first round. Oh my goodness, am I scared of the Raptors. Now, I have Sixers in 6 here, alright? I do believe that they will pull out and prevail. I think that they will get it together enough that Toronto will not be a truly difficult threat to them. I think this is going to be a dogfight of a series with a lot of close games, but ultimately Philly should be able to win in talent despite the massive difference in coaching and despite the fact that Matisse Thybulle is not going to be eligible to play road games. Nevertheless, I could easily flip this and put Raptors in 6. I really don't think that it would be unusual for the Raptors to come out and win this series in 6 games. They are a very good matchup for the Sixers. Nick Nurse is by far, he is proven to be the best coach in the league against Joel Embiid. He's very, very good at sending the correct amount of double teams in the right way to really slow him down and give him issues. And James Harden has been very problematic all season, so I am hoping, hope y'all can't hear that annoying-ass reversing truck in the background, but I'm hoping James Harden gets it together somewhat in this series, and he's good enough to not be an issue scoring-wise, to not be this absolute brick he has been. Oh my goodness, why is this dump truck backing up for so long? But maybe he won't be. Maybe the Sixers will lose, and I honestly, even though, it would absolutely crush me, I wouldn't be all that surprised. So I have Sixers in 6, but it wouldn't be crazy to me if they do, in fact, lose to the Raptors. Anyway, moving on to a series I am much more confident in, we have the Bucks versus the Bulls. And I said Bucks in 5 here because I really think the Bulls should be able to win at least 1 game, but honestly, it could be a sweep. It could be a sweep. I said all season long that the Bulls are pretenders, and look at where we are at the end of the year. They are 0-15 against the top 3 teams in both conferences. They are not contenders, Bull fans. I know you were happy that your team was doing well, but they're just not that good, and we're going to see it here in this Bucks series. I think that DeMar DeRozan playing incredible, Zach LaVine getting hot, Vucevic managing to pull some guys out of the paint. I think they'll be able to steal 1 game, but I really can't see more than that, and frankly, if it's a sweep, I won't be surprised. Bucks in 5. Nets vs. Celtics is a very interesting series. This was the hardest series for me to choose in the first round, even harder than Sixers versus Raptors, actually. I really don't know who's going to win this. I have no idea. If Robin Williams was healthy, I would certainly give the edge to Boston. I might even say Boston in 6 instead of in 7. But I just don't think that the Celtics can pull out, oh my goodness, this truck's backing up again. Any choppy editing there may be at the end of this video is as a result of this stupid dump truck and construction going on right outside my apartment. I'm just saying, okay? I'm not that bad at making videos. It's just stupid truck keeps backing up every 5 minutes. Anyway, y'all don't care about this dump truck and my annoyance with construction people right outside my window. Nets versus Celtics could go either way, but at the end of the day, I think that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving being, at the very least, the best and third best player in this series, if not the best and second best player in this series, will turn the tide. They have some serious defensive issues, but I think that Boston's defense is also pretty overrated. Like, as good as they've been, I don't think that they actually have the stuff to stop a Kevin Durant or a Kyrie Irving. I saw somebody saying the other day, Kyrie had a great game in the play-in the other day, and I saw somebody be like, oh, he's not going to go off like that against Marcus Smart, and like, what? You think Marcus Smart's going to stop Kyrie Irving? I know the man's overrated as hell on defense, but like, come on, guys. Marcus Smart is going to get cooked by Kyrie Irving. Are you freaking joking here? What are you talking about? So I think that the Nets will win in 7. I think when it comes down to a big clutch game at the end, I just have more trust in Kyrie and Kevin Durant to pull it out than I do in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and certainly in Marcus Smart without Robin Williams there to secure the paint. So Nets in 7, but it could very easily go to Boston instead. Back up top, Heat versus Sixers. I have the Sixers winning this series in 6 games, and I'm actually more confident about the Sixers' chances against the Heat than I am with their chances against the Raptors. I really don't think the Heat are a great matchup for Philly, and I mean that for the Heat's side of things. I think that Bam Adebayo is outmatched size-wise by Joel Embiid, as good as he is. I think that the shooting woes they have between Jimmy Butler and Bam in their starting lineup can be manipulated even by a coach as dumb as Doc Rivers is, and I just don't think their offense is going to be good enough to survive what Philly can throw at them on both ends, despite their overall good shooting throughout their roster, and despite their overall good defense. I just don't think the Heat can win this series, and especially if Philly has managed to beat Toronto, which I'm hoping and praying they will, I think that the Sixers are going to have it together enough that they're going to look like a better team than they have for the last few weeks. So Sixers in 6. Bucks versus Nets now, and I have the Bucks winning this series in 6 games. Many people think that Brooklyn's going to win because of how they did last year, and I gotta be honest with you all, I think last year was kind of a fluke. A lot of people saw last year as like, oh, the Nets were right there. They really were that good. You know, they truly were unstoppable. Imagine if James Harden played one more game or Kyrie played one more game, they would have won. And I really see it as more of a Paul George Pacers 2013 kind of thing, where they pushed the clearly superior team further than they were supposed to, but it's not like they were really on the same level talent-wise. I think that the Bucks will pull this series out in 6 games. Once again, the Nets just don't have anyone to stop the Bucks. They're not stopping Drew Holiday. They can maybe kind of stop Chris Middleton a little bit with Kevin Durant on him, but they're not stopping Giannis Antetokounmpo whatsoever either. Andre Drummond is going to get pulled out of the paint by Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis. There's just nothing this team can do defensively to even kind of slow down the Bucks. And while, once again, you can't slow down Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I think Drew Holiday and Giannis Antetokounmpo is about as good as you can get at giving those guys a tough time scoring. So I think the Bucks are going to win this series in 6 games. Maybe the Nets could pull it out. Maybe I'm underestimating them, but I really just think their defensive issues are going to be too much. And, you know, you have a cold game from Steph Curry, or God forbid a cold game from KD or Kyrie, it's a blowout. It's a blowout. You need all of your offensive pieces playing at perfection levels in Brooklyn to win this series, and I don't think it's going to happen. So, Western Conference, again, we've been away from here for a little while. Suns in 5. Whether the Mavs or the Jazz win this series, I think the Phoenix Suns are going to win in 5 games. I really don't think that either of these teams have a chance against Phoenix. Once again, the Suns have been so good all year long. I just don't see a way that they can lose this series. I really don't. You know, the Jazz, they can get pulled around by the Suns' offense. The Mavs, they don't have the defensive ability. As good as they have been on defense, they don't have the actual defensive matchup ability to stop guys like Devin Booker, like DeAndre Ayton, like Chris Paul. They can't even really do much against Mikal Bridges with as well as he's been playing. The Suns are deep. They have a lot of role players. I don't see a way that either of the Jazz or the Mavs could win more than one game against them. So let's move on to Golden State versus the Grizzlies. Now, this may surprise some people, but I think that the Warriors, with a healthy Steph Curry, will win this series in 6 games. I think that they're the superior team. I just do. The Grizzlies played really, really well this season, but at the end of the day, they cannot do anything to stop Steph Curry. They can't even really do much to stop Klay Thompson if he's playing well. Draymond Green is going to be a huge factor in this series. I think he can do a really good job against Jaren Jackson Jr., and potentially they could do a lot against frickin' Desmond Bane, too. Throw in Andrew Wiggins, throw in Draymond Green on switches, throw in Klay Thompson at him. I think he could have a tough time. Ja Morant is going to play very well, but once again, Draymond Green in the post, although he is not tall, I think he could do a good job getting the Warriors defense to keep Ja Morant out of the paint, to make his life difficult. So I think that Golden State will win this series in 6 games, and we will see the Phoenix Suns face the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. And my prediction for this West Final Series is Suns in 6. I think Golden State can push them. I think if Curry is playing well, if Klay looks good, if Draymond Green is healthy and he looks good, they could give them enough issues to win 2 games. But at the end of the day, Phoenix has been absolutely phenomenal this season. I keep coming back to this, but the Suns have just been so good. I mean, you can see my playoff bracket here, okay? We're not going to be a surprise at the end. I think Phoenix is going to win the whole thing, and I think they're going to beat Golden State in 6 games. I just don't think that the Warriors can do enough with how Curry's been playing this year, unless he goes absolutely nuclear and Klay Thompson looks completely like his old self instead of the kind of up and down version we've seen over the last month or so. I just don't see the Warriors pulling this out. I think the Suns will be once again going back to the NBA Finals. And in the Eastern Conference, I have the Bucks winning in 7 games against the Philadelphia 76ers. I think this is going to be an all-time playoff series. The Giannis versus Embiid matchup will be phenomenal. James Harden versus Jrue Holiday is really going to put how good Harden can play to the test. I think that both teams are not too far from each other in terms of role players and bench. I'd say the Bucks have a little bit of a bench advantage, and that's really where I've got to give them the edge here. Not to mention their star power advantage. I would take Jrue Holiday or Chris Middleton over Tyrese Maxey or Tobias Harris. Although James Harden is probably the 3rd best player in the series, the Bucks then have the 4th and 5th. And Tobias Harris can also be really iffy in playoff series. He tends to fall apart against tough defenses, and the Bucks are one of those. I think the Bucks are going to win. I would love for the Sixers to win. I would love for them to go to the finals, but ultimately, I have Bucks in 7 here, and I could also pretty easily see it only being Bucks in 6. It's tough for me to see the Sixers beating this team with how iffy James Harden has been. I think if he was 100%, we would have a much better shot. But right now, I've got to give the Bucks the edge. I think it's going to be an amazing series to watch, a historically good one. But I think the Bucks are going to pull out, and we are going to have a rematch of Bucks versus Suns in the NBA Finals. And don't worry, guys, this is going to be a good rematch, and I think the results are going to swap this time. Instead of Bucks in 6, I think the Phoenix Suns are going to win their first ever NBA championships against the reigning champion Milwaukee Bucks in 6 games. I think they are hungry for revenge. I think they are going to play... I think the Bucks are going to play insanely hard, but I think the Suns ultimately wanted it more than anybody else this season. This is very much like a 2014 Spurs type of thing to me. I think they're just better. Giannis is going to be once again very tough to stop, but the Bucks have one of the best coaches in the NBA. They're going to make life tough on him. Mikal Bridges is going to make life very tough on Chris Middleton. I think he's going to have issues in this series. The Suns have a lot of size to throw at Giannis to make his life difficult. Jrue Holiday could play very well in this series, but Devin Booker and Chris Paul are both decent defenders, at least as of this season. If you weren't aware, Devin Booker has become an above-average defender. He's not great or anything, but he can certainly hold his own. I think that the Suns have the edge in this series. I think they can just do a little bit more than the Bucks, and it comes down to the fact that they have looked near perfect all year, and the Bucks have been up and down. I think at their best, the Bucks are the better team here. However, I think the Suns are at their own best much more often than the Milwaukee Bucks are, and as a result, I think the Phoenix Suns will win the NBA championship in 6 games. Thank you all for watching this video. That is my 2022 playoff bracket prediction. Please let me know in the comments what you agree or disagree with. I'm sure that you have a lot of things you disagree with, so let me know, and feel free to be nice about it. You know, it's nice to not get yelled at. Thank you all for watching, especially since this video ended up being very long, and have a great rest of your day. I am so excited for the NBA playoffs.